Hello everyone, my name is Damian McAlonan. I'm the Group Commercial Director for an organisation called eConsultancy, which I'm sure you all know here. But for those who don't, eConsultancy is the digital marketing and e-commerce experts. We give insight, information, advice, consultancy, and also training to enhance and transform people's organisations. I'm joined here today by an esteemed panel. On my left-hand side, I have Alan Small, the Director of EMEA Business Development with Wish. Alan Small is an e-commerce veteran and built his own e-commerce stores, including a popular EU student marketplace. In July 2020, Alan became Wish's EMEA Director of Business and Development and Partnerships, and now leads EMEA Merchants Development and Success in over 60 countries. Beside Alan, I have Olivier Bufon, who's Head of International at Faire. Faire is the largest online wholesale marketplace that connects over 500,000 independent stores and brands from all around the world. There, Olivier oversees their important foreign growth and scaling plan division. And then I have Hakan Thyr. There we go, got it. He's the Chief Revenue Officer for Fruugo. Hakan supports Fruugo's growth by enabling brands and stores expanding abroad without risk or effort. Prior to his role, he was the Channel Advisor Partnership Director at FirmStep CEO and also Bazaar Voice Partnership Director as well. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is our panel. Give them a warm welcome. There we go. You haven't done anything, and now you're being celebrated already. That's just to ease you in. So listen, we're here today to talk about the opportunities that obviously exist within the international marketplace and what the kind of viable options are for business. Just as a show of hands, who currently is doing international business and feels that they're doing it well? Just a show of hands. It's a couple, 3, 4, okay. And those that are looking to actually enter into the international market. Okay, brilliant. Well, that gives us a good idea of our kind of what we need to do going forward. So I'm going to start with the first question, and the first question is always about the good. So can each of you give me a couple of the opportunities that currently exist within the international marketplace and why companies should be considering this? I'll start with you if I can, Alan.
Yeah, sure. As just said earlier, so my background is I've always been in e-commerce. I've sold on marketplaces. I've created my own marketplace. So obviously, I know what it's like on both sides. And for me, the opportunity for marketplaces is huge. If you really break it down to what a marketplace is, what they're designed for, they're ultimately there to get merchants like you, but also get consumers. That is just their business model through and through. So you get to leverage that expertise that they have. And so that you get instant access to an audience that they've spent years and millions of pounds developing and understanding. And you get to tap straight into that and get access to that data. So the instant thing you can get from that is you get the additional revenue. So it's diversifying your revenue. So it really is gone are the days that you can just rely upon one marketplace. You really need to start diversifying to other marketplaces. It's an extra source of that income for you. You can really tap into that global audience that they have. But also they have all the expertise, everything you need to do, like logistics, the pain points you have in terms of regulations, etc. So it's, yeah, for me it's the gateway to tap into new markets you might never have known actually existed.
Fabulous, thank you. Olivier?
Yeah. Completely agree with what you said. I think, from my perspective, one angle maybe is the fact that I think marketplaces often bring online traditional industries. So, take the case of Faire, where I work at the moment. It's a company where everything used to happen offline before launching a marketplace like that. So brands would go to trade shows. They would have to go twice a year to a big event, sometimes locally, but sometimes also in a faraway country. It's often very expensive. And so when you launch an online marketplace like that, essentially you bring a lot of efficiency. You find a way to streamline a lot an industry. And so that means that you give the players who join the marketplace a lot of financial resilience. You give them better terms, better prices, more efficiency. I think you often give them also a lot of technology and tools that they would not have had access to otherwise. If you look at our small shops that use Fair, it's typically players that would not have used any online tools. And there they have dashboards that even large retailers don't have. And then you give them distribution and access and just the power of a global network. If you look at Fair again, like you have in the last few years around 600 million products that got sold on the marketplace. And those are products that probably would not have been sold had they used traditional ways of selling. And so I think that's why marketplaces are so powerful, because they bring technology to traditional industries which are typically quite fragmented, and they just give a better chance to all those small players to do better and to grow their businesses.
Thank you. And Hakan, I'm really looking forward to yours. No risk, easy does it.
Yeah, so for those of you who aren't familiar with Fruugo, we are a global marketplace. We have sellers in 35 countries selling to consumers on local marketplaces in 45 countries. And so what makes us different, I guess, from your conventional marketplaces is, first of all, that we're completely focused on cross-border, so over 90% of our orders are cross-border. And the other big difference is how we generate traffic to your products. So it's very much driven by digital advertising, predominantly Google Shopping. So the typical customer journey starts on Google rather than on a destination. So you probably haven't heard of us because we're not a B2C brand where people start with a Google search and we show up in the carousel and they land on the product detail page. So in that sense, we're very demand driven. And I think one of the big opportunities with launching on Fruugo is that we tap into local demand, which can be drastically different from what you see in your home market. And so I have any number of examples of UK sellers who sell out of a specific product because suddenly everyone in Switzerland decides to buy it. But in general, I would say the reason for going international is, regardless of what your home country is, the global market is bigger. So there's a lot more opportunity out there. And yeah, there are some hurdles you need to deal with, but it's manageable, and it is the best way to increase your reach and your customer base. Obviously, it's to go global.
Sorry, the worry about going first is you always never know how to answer that question. So can I just add, the other thing which is really unique is each marketplace has its own type of core type of user, and they are unique. So for Wish, we traditionally see our users as value conscious. Doesn't mean that they can't afford more expensive products, but they're more likely to, they know they come to us, they're going to get the best value or a bargain. And they're traditionally left behind by other traditional marketplaces because they're not going to pay for those monthly subscriptions, etc. So again, by tapping into these international marketplaces, each of them has its own core type of demographic of user. And you might not even realize that type of user wants to purchase your product. So again, we've had many merchants come to us saying, I never knew I'd get this type of user. Like, this is the type of the user which we never thought from Denmark would be buying my bamboo products, that sort of thing.
No, that's brilliant, Alan. I was just about to say, I always love it when people sort of bring things alive with actually a bit of a case study, of an organization maybe that was a little bit resistant at first, but then managed to go forward with that. Is there one in mind that any of you can think of?
So I've,
you don't have to mention the names.
No, and more about sales spikes than individual companies, I guess. But during COVID, there were a lot of crazy events like that. And there was one where on the news in Switzerland, on the morning news show, there was a piece about early in vitro studies showing that this echinacea-based product could possibly help kill the virus, right? And everyone in Switzerland went online and started buying this product. So like by 11 o'clock, we had doubled our average daily sales in Switzerland simply based on that. And the sellers that benefited the most were in the US, the UK, and Sweden. So they had no idea what was going on, just because someone said something on TV in Switzerland. And we had a similar story coming out of Netherlands where Friday or evening show, someone said something about some other product called, resveratrol, which is an antioxidant. And we had 4 UK sellers completely sell out of anything containing resveratrol over the weekend. So those are the kind of spikes that you completely miss because you don't know what's going on in the Netherlands. So,
Absolutely.
I was about to say we've got a great example of we had a merchant who just part-time used to sell slot cars and never even heard of what a slot car was. It was a very niche type of product, and he was doing it part-time. I think he was a manager at like Asda or something on the side, and basically started selling on Wish, and his sales just blew up in the US. Not in the UK, it wasn't that popular, slot cars, but in the US it grew so much. He quit his job, he's now got employees working for him, and he's now stocking his products in places like John Lewis, etc. And that's all from just international expansion. He was just doing it as a little side hobby at first. We've actually built a case study in a video about how popular slot cars are actually in the US, based around these types of sellers selling internationally as well.
Sounds fantastic. So that's all the good stuff, right? That's all the good. What are actually the challenges for people wanting to do this? Because obviously, the opportunity's there. So what's holding people back? If I can go to you, Olivier, first.
Yeah. If I look at our customers, I think there are 3 big areas like that of challenges. One is around the complexity. It's like our sellers or even the retailers, they tend to always underestimate how complex and how much friction there is when you try selling abroad, right? In our case, with all these independent brands, as an example, they find that things like VAT, for instance, happens to be different even within the same trade zone like the EU. And so for a UK brand trying to sell to Spain or France, depending on the category they sell in, they realize that actually the VAT rates are different. Just a small example, but we see like friction points like that everywhere. And that's why I think marketplaces for people like that add a lot of value, because we do anticipate and solve those problems for them. It's much easier for us because we have seen that case many times, and because we have engineers working on it. So to me, that's one. I think another one is just the exposure to the global macro headwinds, the global economy. It's hard because it's often a big investment to grow international, and so they take a big risk. And I was meeting with a brand a few days ago, and she was telling me that if it had not been for FAIR, she probably would have had to shut down her operations internationally because going to trade shows had become too expensive for that brand. It's a UK-based, London-based brand. And so for them, selling to the US meant having to have, going to trade shows over there, and with the cost of travel having increased and so on, it was just becoming too much. And then obviously with COVID as well, it was just impossible. There were no trade shows anyway. So that's the second thing, I think, to navigate these macro headwinds, like all those unexpected events, I think it helps a lot. And the last one that to me has been quite striking is really around the sustainability angle. And maybe I'm a bit biased because a lot of our end customers really care a lot about that, and they really talk a lot to us about trying to find products that are sustainable. But it's become really a major theme. And so there again, helping, using a marketplace like FAIR or another marketplace where you have labels, or in our case, we just launched a sustainability hub that helps them find the right brand that will match all the criteria that they are looking for, is something that is also a big way of saving time and making sure that they find the products that are aligned with the values they're looking for. But those 3 things are big challenges that we keep seeing over and over with our customers.
And the same question for you, Hakan.
Well, there are like known problems, right? Which is any good international marketplace will solve. So like we'll calculate VAT, manage VAT payments, marketplace tax, all that. I think there's always something new, right? So right now, a lot of the challenges are around compliance in one form or the other. So several countries have instituted, and this is not necessarily a bad thing, but they have like tax that pays for recycling schemes. So as someone who is considered a producer, and if you sell into Europe, you are a producer regardless if you made the product or not. You are responsible for paying a fee for recycling the packaging, and depending on the product, could be the product itself as well. So obviously we built in the ability for you to tell us what your registration is, because we have to, but ultimately you need to manage registering for all these recycling schemes, and unfortunately it's not one central one in Europe. You will need to register in each country individually, which is pain in the neck. And then, and I'm sure you guys have encountered this one, if you are selling products that have copyrighted images, like, I don't know, Captain America t-shirts or whatever, there is a new type of ambulance chasing lawyers in the US who like to go after marketplaces with basically class action lawsuits on behalf of brands. And it's not necessarily what you'd expect. Like we've had lawyers basically come after us to shut down sellers who sell branded products, even if they do have permission to sell them. And frequently it's easier for the retailer to just pay off the attorneys than to actually fight the claim. And like the first batch had Peppa Pig and Metallica. So it's like you can't really predict what it's going to be either. But if you're selling anything that could have copyright infringement, possibly, well, you could be accused of, if you don't have like super tight documentation of that, that's definitely something to be prepared for.
Exactly, the regulation is, the EPR, which Hakan was just referencing there. The frustrating thing is it's a European law, but each country is adopting it slightly differently or at different times. Like some aren't doing it till the UK is not till 2025. It's now live in France and Germany. So that's just knowing when it's coming on is always like a difficult thing to navigate. But that's where marketplaces help educate and let you know. But for us, we did our European summit just in London recently, and the number one pain point our merchants said about selling internationally was logistics costs. They want to sell internationally, but it costs so much to ship to the US, Australia, even to Europe, and how do they remain competitive? So with Wish, we have over 1 million items sold every single day. So we're able to leverage that volume with our carriers that already have to then pass on those reduced rates to our merchants in the UK, because over 60% of all of our UK merchants' orders are international. So we've adopted this with Landmark Global. It just went live recently, and on its industry-beating pricing. So we've actually got merchants who are already selling on 160 different marketplaces, for example, and they've changed their carrier to go to this one because of the rates we've been able to negotiate. As an individual merchant, you would never be able to get those, even if you're doing huge volumes. But when you leverage what a marketplace has and the volumes they have, you can leverage the tools and the functionalities that they have or the partnerships they have. So that's one of the pain points, but we've been able to lift it now as well.
I think you're looking at my questions. I was going to ask, what logistical considerations and fulfillment strategies should actually organizations prioritize?
You gave one answer on that one. I think, again, but using the right carrier obviously makes a huge difference. I know it sounds very, very simple, but there's so many carriers you can pick out there, and some of them just don't offer all the checkpoints that you want, etc. Also, what you really need to understand is what the marketplace's rules are when it comes to tracking. So for example, Wish, you need to be fully tracked. Other marketplaces might just need semi-tracked. So you want to understand what you need there. I would always recommend, if you're selling internationally, to go fully tracked, because we've seen it reduces your refund rate. It actually improves your NPS because they're able to see at every point where that product is appearing. And then the final part as well is to really consider is the returns program, or what returns policies that marketplace has. When selling internationally, you're always worried about, how do I handle returns? How does it work? And some marketplaces that handle it differently as well. So at Wish, we built a managed returns program, which basically means you decide how you want it to be. If you want Wish to handle the customer service and then the products get returned to a warehouse in that country, we can do that. If you want to get it returned to your individual warehouse, you can select that as well. If you want the merchant, if you want the consumer to pay part towards it, you can basically select what's right for you and what works for your company.
Excellent, thank you. Please, Olivier.
Yeah, I mean, I agree again with lots of the things that you said. Like, we also did a study with our customers, and in the top three reasons or considerations for buying on the marketplace was exactly that question of shipping costs and shipping reliability. So I think it's definitely top of mind. To your point, I think it applies a lot more when you sell abroad, because it's just a lot more complicated. And I think there, in our case, what we've done is that we've negotiated deals globally with global partners, with DHL, with UPS, as well as with local partners, delivery partners. And so that way we've been able to pass on those negotiated rates to the end customer, I mean, to the shops and brands that work with us. And to me, it goes back to the first question you were asking about marketplaces and why it makes sense. It's just because if you put together the strength of all those independent players and ask someone, so in this case us, to negotiate on their behalf with carriers, with global carriers, they just get much better terms and better conditions. So that's the way that we've found to go around shipping and trying to help them get better shipping conditions. But that's definitely something that we continue focusing on, because it remains very complicated. It's very hard to have also a zero default rate or zero issue approach with shipping. So that remains really a top priority. Like, it's something that I think for all cross-border marketplaces is really something essential.
If you have anything else, Hakan?
I would say it depends a little bit on the product as well. So yes, if you're competing with local product and shipping internationally, then price is going to be an issue, right? But if you have something really unique that customer in Italy can't find in Italy, then they're going to be willing to pay standard rates or whatever it is. So like, shipping cost becomes less important. So again, that depends on what you are selling. But yeah, you definitely need to figure out what you need to do to be competitive. Try baking the cost into the product price if you can, because people would still rather, pay 13 quid for something if it's free shipping rather than paying 9 quid and 2 quid shipping, because and also think about, are there, especially as you start growing internationally, is there a subsection of your products that you should be putting on the ground? So do you need a 3PL in Europe that can handle your European distribution, for example, which is kind of the next evolution if you start by shipping from home and then put product on the ground, at least for your top sellers.
Great, thank you. So one thing that I was thinking about is that you've got this massive opportunity ahead of you, but you've also joined a field that's enormous. When it comes to the marketing side of things, how would you suggest that someone was able to stand out really in this marketplace, because it's become a lot bigger than what you're currently used to, maybe? I'll start with you, if that's okay, Alan.
Yeah, of course. It's a question we get all the time from our merchants. How do I compete internationally? And the number one thing I would say straight away is build out that brand story and be consistent with your brand story as well. So I mean, things like your images, your product descriptions, making sure it's consistent all the way through. They're going to be used to these products, especially if there's similar products you can get in other countries. Make sure you're unique with those product descriptions. But the number one thing we say to all of our merchants is really understand what that USP is of that marketplace, what their strengths are, what their audiences are, because you can kind of guess how the algorithm's going to favor things as well. So you can then start to tailor your product listings to that. And the main thing as well linked to that is understanding the features and the tools that marketplace has. Because again, going back to the algorithm, when a marketplace launches a new feature or a new tool, it's not giving away secrets about the Wish algorithm or anything, but they want that tool to be a success. So they will drive more traffic to those products that are using that tool. Like, we just launched collections, for example, or just events. So don't be afraid to use those tools, and don't be afraid to be one of the first people to use it, because you're more likely to get additional exposure for free, and also it'll start to embed you more on those impressions, on the algorithm as well, which will then just be a snowball effect.
Yeah, I think my one piece of advice is to invest early, in the very early days of having joined the marketplace. to make sure that your shop is really well set up. So essentially, like, treat this shop on the marketplace in the same way as you would for a physical space. And so, to your point, all the aspects of product description, pictures, and so on are essential. I would also say everything around making sure that you have your best products, your full catalog, and the best products in there at the best possible price. So don't try to make an extra margin through the marketplace, because customers do find out these sort of things, and you have to build trust very early on. And that will drive typically the flywheel and the algorithm with the marketplace if you do it in the early days. So invest early, make sure the shop is well set up, make sure your catalog is complete. And then I think, to your point, using tools, using integrations. So in our case, we announced, for instance, yesterday a partnership with Shopify for deep integrations between Shopify and Fair, so that all the merchants of Shopify can use Fair and the other way around. It's something where we've seen that those who adopt that and who adopt the integration early obviously do better. And so that's why I think it's definitely worth the early investment, and join when you're ready to make this investment to set up your brand in the best possible way.
Great, thank you.
I'm going to echo Alan and say it starts with data. So good images, good descriptions, make sure they adhere to whatever the marketplace recommends and demands. An eBay listing is very different from an Amazon one. Depending on your business model, I think if you're a brand and you're very brand conscious, obviously try to figure out which marketplaces offer you brand tools, but you also need to let go of that a bit, because you're never going to have that tight brand control on a marketplace. Like, we offer, a brand page, but you're not going to be able to have complete control of your brand on a marketplace. But as a retailer, the first step to optimizing is going to be having better data than anyone else.
Great. And just on that marketing side of things, and we have talked about brand sort of purpose and the likes of, but are there any other ways that an organization can build trust quickly into the international markets?
Yeah, it's one of the hardest things when you go into a new marketplace, that you have no reviews, you're starting cold. So for me, the number one thing is customer service. Really, you can never be too much in customer service. The more marketplaces you go to, the harder it does get to keep on top of all of that customer service and the different time zones, etc. That's why, again, leveraging integrations. We've got a partnership with eDesk, who are here. Little plug for them. But yeah, that's a great tool for you to be able to manage all your customer service tickets in one place. But also, you can use that to then get reviews as well, because it's hard to keep on track of asking people to leave reviews, because that UGC we were talking about, picture reviews, just even like 5 stars, it arrived on time, it's huge. It builds all of that trust. So really leveraging that, but also, again, goes back to understanding the marketplaces and the features of how they work. So at Wish, we rank every merchant from platinum down to bronze, depending on how well they perform. And if you are a platinum or a gold merchant, you get this premier merchant badge. And so that adds an extra layer of trust. So when you're going through products on Wish and you see that premier merchant badge, you know this is a trusted merchant, because it's based upon your own metrics. How quickly what your refund rate is, what your customer service response rate is, what your fulfillment rate is as well. So really understanding how the scoring works as well.
Yeah, carbon copy that. We do the same kind of scoring, so we will look at cancellation rates, return rates, response time to customer service, that kind of thing. So make sure you understand what the KPIs are for each marketplace, so you live up to whatever that may be. They tend to be very similar, but make sure you don't violate some rule that you hadn't bothered actually investigating. So understand what you need to do in each marketplace, and especially when you start out, make absolutely sure you beat those KPIs.
Olivier?
No, I agree with all that. The one thing maybe is also to invest enough time in the localization aspects. So I think we provide tools, and most marketplaces provide tools to localize your product, to localize product titles and so on, but it doesn't mean that it's perfect. It does not mean that it's going to instill trust with an international seller. And so we found that those brands who do invest the time to check what the experience looks like as a foreign buyer, ideally with local people or local speakers, is helpful. So making sure the image, the text, the experience feels a bit local to a local person is also important. And again, if there are tools offered by the marketplace to do that, do leverage them, because it is going to be a first impression that is going to be important to build this initial trust.
Absolutely. So I'm sure you'll agree, it's very hard to get this kind of advice just off the whim. But what I will be doing after the next question is have a roaming mic for anyone who has any specific questions for the gentleman here. But I am going to ask you this one. It's for me, really. What marketplaces really stand out for you other than the obvious ones, and why? Where am I going to invest?
That depends so much on your verticals. Like a lot of the emerging marketplaces are very vertical specific. So be that Coliseo or whatever for sports, or you have like local champions like CDON in Sweden or whatever. But I guess right now, and I'm sure you're seeing this, Temu is obviously the big one everyone's talking about because they're very cheap. I would say I don't have like a specific answer that will apply to everyone, so it's very vertical specific. So investigate what are the niche marketplaces depending on your catalogs would be my advice.
I've never actually heard of Temu. Again, very similar answers. The ones I really admire, again, are those vertical marketplaces. And the reason why is because I think they're actually challenging the horizontal marketplaces like we are to up our games. Because by building that vertical experience, like the one, Wish is just launching a new refurbished electronics area, for example. And so we looked at Backmarket. We think what they're doing has been fantastic because not only have they built this amazing vertical experience, also refurbished wasn't really that well known when they started. So they've actually spent a lot of time educating customers and telling them why refurbished is good, etc. So it's helping someone like Wish when we come in that we don't have to spend as much time educating why you should buy refurbished, because someone like that has really championed it, and it takes a long time to build that up. So for me, yeah, it's admiring those vertical ones because, again, like Hakan said, think about what categories you sell, because there are vertical marketplaces out there that you could really lean in on, which might be just ideal. You might not need to go to as many marketplaces internationally. You can just identify the right vertical ones as well.
And I think I'm going to cheat a little bit because I would quote one that is very well known. I know your question said a not well known, not obvious one, I think. But cheating because I used to work for them. It's Airbnb. I worked for them something like joined 8 years ago or something. So it was a lot smaller in Europe back then. And so less obvious. And I think, to the point of how marketplaces can bring online a traditional industry and how they can help build trust for cross-border transactions, I think the model of Airbnb was just fascinating. The way that you could build trust with like millions of travelers around the world who started discovering Europe or Asia or other continents, and how that became something completely mainstream over the years is something that I still find quite fascinating and that I still try to think of quite often, when even if it's a completely different field, I think there's still lots of learnings from that experience.
Super, thank you very much. Okay, if you have any questions, please raise your hand and a microphone will be coming to you. Anyone with any questions? Here we go.
So my question is, how do you manage the competitive intelligence, right? Like since, Temu is there, you just mentioned. So what exactly you see it on Temu is a very price competitive, right? Like everything you want, it's there. Considering that, you have the price barrier with respect to everything is been sold from China, how do you tackle that kind of an information? The competitive intelligence and the price positioning.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think Temu's just come after. Even I've read about the amount of audiences that people like Amazon and eBay have lost to Temu. So it's not even a direct company like Wish, which is known for the Chinese products. Obviously, it's going to be seen as that's impacting us quite a lot. So what we're doing about that is we're really leaning on what's making us unique. So we have unique things such as Temu's all China. So we have a lot of European supply and US supply. So we really leverage the fact that we have those local products as well. Things you can't get, branded products such as refurbished electronics. You've got like other branded products. We work with like people like Unilever and all those mainstream brands that you can't really get. And also, going back to that vertical discussion I mentioned earlier, we really want to, we're focusing on certain categories that we think we can really deliver extra value on. So we're known as the home and lifestyle more. So we're focusing on just those core verticals, and we're building out custom experiences just for those core verticals. Whilst Temu's trying to take on absolutely everything, we're going to like sort of pick our battles in the right verticals that we can really go above and beyond on in terms of the customer experience. And for us, our European supply, our European merchants is a pivotal part of that as well. It's a key differentiator for us.
Guess what? I'm going to say the same thing. Yeah, I mean, we're a European marketplace. We're headquartered in Cumbria. UK is probably our biggest customer base here, but we do have a lot of Chinese sellers on the platform as well. So from that standpoint, we probably have similar products to Temu. But we have sellers in 35 different countries, and that number of countries is growing. So we do have a different selection that's not just coming out of China. And having said that, they're doing an amazing job, and they have a very deep integration in all the way into production, which is how they can beat manufacturers up on price. See how long they can keep that up. But I think our differentiation is 35 countries selling to 45 different countries. So until they manage to duplicate that, I wouldn't say we're not worried, but like for us, the biggest competition from Temu has been probably on the Google advertising side, because they're spending a lot of money on that as well. But in terms of products, we have a different catalog.
Okay, and this gentleman here had a question.
Yeah, Olivier, you mentioned localization being important. I'd just be interested to hear how you guys help merchants with how they localize, translate all of the different products they might provide on your marketplace.
So I think you asked about localization, right? Yeah. So obviously we have localized sites. So like the furniture or whatever on the site is fully localized in every country. We machine translate to 28 languages. If you happen to have your own translations, you can use that, but few people have, Finnish product descriptions, so we'll do that for you. Is it perfect? No, but it's good enough. So to generate check sales, for example. So yeah, it is very much a local experience. So people buy from Fruugo, Norway, and it's like buying from a Norwegian site.
Just to add to that, obviously we've got the exact same because we're quite a similar marketplace, but something which we try to push as well, which is a bit, realistically we will tell everyone, localize your products to every single country. We do a lot of the translation already, but realistically, it's a lot of effort. So really leverage universal storytelling where you can. And that's something really push our users. Videos, for example, they say pictures say 1,000 words, like videos even better. If you're showing a video how the product's working, before and after what you get, you don't really need to worry about how well the description's translated, because the video should show how that works. And then the same for things like deals and discounts. Again, deals and discounts, they're universal. So really leveraging the universal parts as well as the localization parts is like a key strategy we try to push for merchants.
So just to add on the same question, so do you take some generative AI help to do some translation or something to do with the content for that matter?
It's a great, we did a panel discussion the other day on Gen AI as well, and we had the exact same thing. So Wish has always used generative AI, technically. All of our algorithms built around it. But what we're really starting to use it for now is curating collections. So product descriptions, I'm sure there's a lot of tools out there, like listing tools that help with those as well. But what we're trying to do is we're using it to build custom collections so that we'll know what you're interested in and we'll have curated custom collections, because it's not scalable for us to manually create these collections over and over again. So that's what we'll probably be using it for.
Great, right, we're coming to the, oh, okay, if it's a quick one.
Thank you. It's quite technical, but I'm just dealing with this right now. Quick question. Oh, can you hear me now? Is it better? Okay, it's a little bit technical question, but what I'm really thinking about right now, what is this internationalization and localization to you guys in terms of search engine optimization? Because I've found there's a lot of limitation. What is your experience? I can...
Can you just repeat the question again for us, just a little bit louder? Thank you.
Okay,
I believe it's about search optimization, is that correct?
Yeah, because you were talking about localization across different countries, and you translate the language, you have local currencies, etc. But what about search engine optimization? So you're ranking, so you don't drop in ranking when you have duplicate, duplication issue. It's one of those things Google is watching. The algorithm, of course.
So for us, to be honest, SEO is much less important than Google Shopping. So we spend an obscene amount of money on Google Shopping. So the way our model works is half your commission is essentially spent on marketing on Google Shopping. So obviously, since everything is localized in terms of the site itself and content is in local language, you will have a similar SEO impact in each country, but that's not the key for how we drive traffic to your products.
Okay, we come to the end. I'm just going to give a final question to the panel. You have to convince everyone in the room, you have 3 words to do it, of why they should go international. Your 3 words are?
I love how I look shocked as if I didn't know this question was coming as well. But diversification, opportunity, and simplified.
Okay, Olivier?
Scale, efficiency, and agility.
Great. Hakan?
All right, in terms of 3 words of advice, I would say launch, learn, optimize.
Perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Can you put your hands together for the panel? They're fantastic. And thank you very much for coming.